Welcome to The Secrets of Success. By following the proven techniques of the guests who appear on this series, you'll learn that even successful people run into detours and failures, and how you can apply their success techniques to change your life.
You're now listening to the most unique show on radio, the show dedicated to making you a success. Our guest, Robynn Storey, says everyone has a story. Let's ask her to tell us more. Robynn, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on board. I am very excited about our conversation.
Now, I am too, because I told you I love your book, and really I was getting enthusiastic reading it and saying, I want to get to the next chapter. I want to get, which is, of course, the best sign. If you can't get enough of a book, that's the perfect book. Your book is called Career Confidence, and you start off telling us about yourself and your company. So give us a little idea of your background and how your company came about.
Sure, absolutely. So I own a company called Storyline Resumes. We're one of the largest privately held executive, senior level and executive resume writing firms in the United States. We currently have a staff of 70. I've been in business for 24 years, and we've helped about 300,000 people tell their very best professional stories. I certainly never started off thinking I would be a resume writer. I worked in marketing. I did a little work in human resources. And then a friend of a friend asked me to help write his resume. I was in a position where I was doing a lot of hiring. And I sat down with him on a Saturday afternoon. He was an engineer, and helped him write his resume. And not long after that, he got a really great job and started sending his friends over to me. And so I was working full time. I have 2 children, and I was, helping people in the evenings. I'd have them come over to the house, would sit at the kitchen table and talk about their careers and what they loved and what they didn't and what they wanted to be when they grew up. And finally, after a couple of months of this, my husband's a CPA. I should probably mention that. He said, "Why are you doing this for free? You need to charge for your time." And that's how it started. And I think I charged $50 for my first resume. And I thought, I love this. I have a passion for this. I am a storyteller by nature, and I'm going to turn this into a business.
So you had a side hustle before the term side hustle.
I did have a side hustle before. I was actually fairly high up in human resources. And I remember one time sitting in a meeting and my cell phone went off. And, I was at my day job at work, and my cell phone went off, and it was somebody inquiring about resume services. And I left my corporate meeting to go out in the hallway to talk to them about what their needs for a resume. And I thought, you know what, this is really what I want to do. So I talked with my husband, and I said, I know it's crazy, but I'm going to quit this well-paying job, and, I'm going to quit this corporate life, and I'm going to see if I can turn this into a business. And he said to me, I'll tell you what, if you can do something on the side to float, to pay for groceries, I can float us for about a year. And I said, okay. And I quit my job. I quit a very high level job, and I became a waitress. So that's what I did. I was home with my kids during the day. I worked on the business. I waited tables at night. I was a terrible waitress, but, I made decent money. And, like I say in the book, so I was able to buy the groceries. And now, of course, I buy all the groceries. But when you have that kind of support, you can definitely succeed. Get somebody in your corner.
It's nice you admit that, but I know from reading the book, and I got a big kick out of that, as I said to you before the show, you say you were kind of the world's worst waitress, and literally a glass of red wine on some executive sitting at a table who wasn't too happy about it. And yet you hung in there with both jobs, right?
I hung in there, right? So my husband teases me. I'm the only person he knows that trips going up the steps. So I am not the most, graceful person. And so carrying like big trays full of lots of plates, I would have to bring plates out one at a time. But you know what? I got the hang of it. And I loved being a waitress. And I know for a lot of people that probably feels like, oh, you went from like an EVP of human resources to being a waitress. But I love people, and I love their stories. And I think that folks that tend to be successful kind of make the best of their situation, whatever that situation is. And you learn something from it. So I often give advice to young professionals that message me on LinkedIn about how to find their way. And I say, listen, you're going to fall in and out of a lot of different kinds of jobs. Find something that you love about every job. And that helps to build your passion. Learn something from every job, whether or not it's something that you love to do or something that you definitely don't want to do. the takeaway is that now you know something more about yourself than you did before you started that. So, but I loved it. It was fun. I stayed there for about a year and a half until I kind of got things off the ground, and it's slow going with the business. And, you just work at it every single day. I don't think I made any money for the first 4 years, and I just kept anything I made, I just kept reinvesting. And, and here we are 24 years later, and it's, been a lot of fun. And I always used to say it's like Christmas every day here. You never know who's going to be on the other line when you pick up the phone.
Now, would you say you attribute your success, though? Do you have like a secret sauce? Do you make the resume almost like a mystery that someone has to read it? Or do you use keywords that when they put it into the computer, all of a sudden they'll say, this is the person I have to hire?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, right? Most resumes are very inherently boring. I look at resumes all day long. People are always sending me their resumes. So I'll give you an example. I was talking to a young lady. She is an accountant. She makes $40,000 a year, and she has an MBA. And in her resume, she talks about her job description, what she does as an accountant. And she said, I feel like I'm never going to make more than $40,000 a year. And I said, well, the first thing you need to do is educate yourself, not educate yourself in the traditional go to college, get an MBA. She already had that. Educate yourself about your value. Right now in this country, there's a massive shortage of accountants. So accountants are high ticket and hot ticket people. You have to know where to look, but getting people interested in who you are as an accountant or a finance person is not going to be, it's not going to happen when you're talking about the general ledger, right? We already know that you do that. We know that you balance the books. We know that you do the processing and the payroll and the yada, yada, yada. What I'm looking for is what makes you the best accountant I've ever met. Tell me a story. Tell me about a company that you walked into and their accounting practices were a mess. Tell me about money that you invested in technology to, increase production, reduce mistakes, and give me a greater outcome. And let's measure that. So even if you feel like your job is boring or it's simple or it's, repetitive, there's something about you that is special. And our job is to help find out what part of you, what part of your career, part of your job, what part of your performance is special. That's what we want to see on your resume. Everyone has it. 90% of people think they don't.
As you were answering that question, I'm just thinking of you almost like a sports agent. And what I mean by that is someone comes to you with a resume, like this lady. She was making $40,000, which sounds very much on the low end, unless she's in a unique or strange place in the country, etc. But someone goes out there and you're putting the resume out. They may get $2,000 a year more or $200,000, and I think there's some stories in the book where people have jumped literally $100,000, maybe more than that, if I remember.
Absolutely.
And you're their agent, so to speak. You've created that door opener that got them in. Then they can decide if they don't want the job, if it's either more pressure or a different location. That's up to them. Just like the ball player, they don't have to go to a new city, but they have the opportunity to earn a lot more. And if they're earning $10,000 more for 30 years, that's $300,000, whether it's in an IRA or a college fund or just paying the household bills.
Well, this young lady had sort of fallen into a funk. She was with a small company. They gave her a sort of a low-level title. And they justified paying her $40,000 a year that way, right? We're not really that big. You were an APAR assistant. Now we promoted you into this accountant title. And she felt grateful. But the fact is, on the open market, she's probably worth double, maybe even triple within a larger company or a company that is facing challenges in that particular department. And she knows how to clean things up and she knows how to make things right. But when you don't know your own value, you cannot speak to it yourself. You can't advocate for yourself. You don't think that what you do is important. Therein lies the problem. You find yourself repeatedly getting lower level jobs, low paying jobs that don't value you because you don't have the confidence to apply to something at a higher level. In a resume, I can't tell you how many times through the years, someone has called this office and said, I'm reading through my draft and I'm actually tearful, or I can't believe this is me, or I'm phenomenal. I had no idea of all these things that I did. But we go through a process where we're dragging it out of you and we're making you tell us stories and we're finding out what is so special about you. And then when you see that in your resume, as hokey as that sounds, it can be a very, very empowering thing.
Robynn, I'm just going to throw some numbers out to our audience, and I think you mentioned this. You have 70 people working as part of your company, knocking out these resumes. You've been doing this for 20 years. That kind of tells me you're in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And if any of us are looking for a job or want to change jobs, want to better ourselves, it's probably a good idea to call you, talk to you, learn from you, and most assuredly hire your organization, because no matter what we pay, again, like the sports agent, it's certainly worth it because we're going to come out making more, or we're not going to accept the job. So
it's such a small investment in yourself. I did a breakdown recently for the clients. We work with about 200 clients a week here. 50% of them are wanting to just be prepared. The job market is very volatile right now. There are a lot of layoffs, and we're seeing something very strange this year where high performers, top performers, number one ranked salesperson, long-term employees of companies are getting laid off with the same zest and fervor as someone who's been dialing it in for years. So there really doesn't seem to be any forethought as to what's going to happen when we let these people go. The only thing that a lot of companies are really thinking of is that we need to back out X amount of dollars out of our budget. Who can we get rid of? So people that, walk around feeling like they're safe because they're indispensable, walk around feeling like they're safe because they're the best at what they do, walk around feeling safe because, they got a phenomenal performance review. Definitely feel safe. Don't walk around or spend your life, feeling like, oh, I need to be on pins and needles. But the best thing you can do is be prepared. Always have a really great resume ready. Always make sure that you're keeping your own sort of running contact list. A lot of people have everything on their work computers. They log into their LinkedIn profile with their work email. If you're logging into your LinkedIn profile with your work email and you get fired and you get laid off and you lose that work email, you're not going to be able to recover that profile. So make sure that your LinkedIn profile is connected to your personal email address. Make sure you have a list somewhere on your computer at home of the key contacts that you've met in your career. Make sure that you've got copies of all of your performance reviews. If you got a nice note from a customer or your boss or whatever, scan it, copy it, take a picture of it, take it off site. Those are the things that you're going to need. And we also recommend that people are constantly running what we call your long resume, where every 6 months you're sitting down and you're doing a 15-minute synopsis. You're taking notes on your computer of what you accomplished in the past 16 months. Because 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, when you want to change jobs, you're not going to remember what your quota was. You're not going to remember what your budget was. But if you've got that data, you've got that long resume running, it makes our jobs a hell of a lot easier, and yours too.
Robynn, before we go further, I want our audience to know, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Robynn Storey, spelled Storey. Her book is Career Confidence, and we're going to ask Robynn, can you give us the website?
Sure. It is www.storylineresumes.com, and that's Story with an E, just like my last name, Storey.
And Robynn, because this is one of those topics, I'm sure someone's listening and say, well, that's not for me today. I'm going to also point out that we have a podcast, and I want people to take this down. Go to nccradio.org, O-R-G, and simply look for Secrets of Success and then Career Confidence. Today, you might not need it. In a week from now, it might be your husband, the neighbor, and all of a sudden you can say, wait, I know just the right person. And instead of looking around for 3 or 6 months or being desperate, that person can jump right into it, get hold of Robynn's book, get hold of Robynn, and get the ball moving for a career that might be much more rewarding, both financially and personally, doing what they love or getting into a new field that might be different, but again, a passion for the person. You mention in your book that life can be exactly as you want it to be. And that's why I like this book so much. It's kind of motivational as well as about the resume. Can people really get that much out of life just by changing their resume?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely you can. First of all, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you bring value. And if you don't do that, if you don't believe that you have value, if you don't believe that you have worth, you need to talk with a coach, someone who can help you identify what it is that your passion is. What are you really good at? There's something special about every single person on this planet. And, a really great conversation with someone who cares about telling your story and then can create that story in the form of a resume can be something that's, super empowering. And I have learned through 24 years of owning this business from my own personal background and the people that I talk to every day. I think the greatest cosmic lottery in life is, right, who you're born to. I mean, who your family is. Some of us are born, poor, but, families that love us and support us. Some of us are born rich and, parents that maybe ignore us or, somewhere in between. But when you get to be an adult and you've worked through, any issues that you've had, ultimately the choice is yours. How do you want to live your life? How do you want to work? What do you want to do to make money? What fulfills you? What doesn't? Those are all questions that everyone needs to be asking themselves, and not to get too philosophical about things, because I think a lot of us just sort of, bobble around in our careers until we stumble upon something that we really have a passion for. And I encourage people to do that. But, try new things. Don't be afraid to leave a job if you hate it, and find something that you love. People need to feel entitled to happiness, but they don't necessarily need to feel entitled to opportunity. Nobody is standing around waiting to hand you an opportunity. Those are things that you make happen yourself.
And actually, that's the perfect lead into my next question. You have a section called Fake It Till You Make It. And you mentioned in there when you just started out, you were kind of a 1 or 2 person operation. And you got a call from a company that was closing but wanted to help their workers get jobs. And I think it was like 89 or 90 resumes. Was like just in one handful, do these, not one at a time, but we need 90 people to get a new job. So I
got a phone call from a company. They were exiting the U.S. market. They were closing 600 locations in the U.S. and they wanted to order, I think it was 78 or 80 resumes for their top executives. And at the time, it was myself, I had an admin, and one other writer. And they said he had been referred to me through somebody. All their executives needed resumes, they needed LinkedIn profiles, they needed cover letters. Can you do it? And before I could stop, my mouth from moving, I said, absolutely. And I took a deposit down, and literally for weeks, I worked around the clock interviewing all of these, folks. They were all finance people, interviewing them, developing their resumes. I would work all day. I would take a break. I would have dinner with my family. I would put my kids to bed, and I'd be interviewing people at midnight. I mean, they were all over the country. And I just worked. And I thought, you know what, I can do this. And I did it. I was young. I was enthusiastic. I knew what I was talking about. I knew the questions to ask. To this day, I feel like fundamentally, if I wouldn't have said yes to that opportunity, I don't know that Storyline Resumes would have happened. Because like so many other people, I was sort of unsure of myself and, can I do this? And, is this going to be successful? And when you say yes, you jump in both feet. Sometimes you take an opportunity that's way over your head and you kick ass, and here you are.
And I find that so amazing, because not only is that 90 resumes, which for most of us, if we want to think of it, it's like writing a college composition. If you could do one a day, that's pretty good, but that would be 90 days. You had to knock these out. These are people's
6
lives
weeks.
and jobs.
I had 6 weeks to knock them out.
And that's not very much. That's basically 2 to 3 a day. And as you said, you have to get to know the people.
And then doing all the interviews. Absolutely.
And helping them with that.
And then we had other customers as well. But it was definitely an exercise in tenacity. Of course, by the end, I was elated. Through the years, all of those people that we've worked with, they've, gone on to bigger and better things. Some are in the U.S. A lot of them went to Europe, where they set up shop, and, they still come back to us for resume updates.
And I bet a lot of people never even think of that as like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Here they have a resource, you who knows the market, knows the national market and most things, and you have 70 employees working with you that if it's not something maybe there's a specialist for chemists or doctors or nurses or something.
Yeah.
So more and more, even though I'm not looking for a job, you got me excited about this. So you've done the ultimate. Once again, before we...
it. We'll do your resume for you.
I think I got to get back in the
never know what could
workforce.
happen.
The station better be worried. They better raise my salary. Before we go further, before we go further, I want our audience to know that they're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan. Our guest today is Robynn Storey, Storey. Her book is Career Confidence. And maybe if you're lacking some of that confidence, Robynn's going to give you the website where you can learn more.
Sure. It's www.storylineresumes.com. And that is story with an E, Storey, lineresumes.com.
And again, for our audience, you might say, oh, this is not for me. I don't need a job. Take it down anyway. You might be surprised. And you can always listen to this show on our podcast. Go to nccradio.org. That's org.org. Just look for Secrets of Success and then Career Confidence with Robynn Storey. Robynn, you have a chapter that says, if you want loyalty, get a dog. Why is that in there? What has that got to do with this?
So I think that a lot of us grew up with parents, fathers especially, that worked for a company long term. My dad worked in factories. A lot of the people that grew up in my neighborhood, their dads worked for Westinghouse or Kennametal or the Elliott Company here in Western Pennsylvania, and they worked there their entire lives. That doesn't seem to exist so much anymore. There's an extremely small portion of the population in the U.S. that has been in a job more than 10 or 12 years. And the reason for that is on the side of the employer, there's less loyalty to the employee. On the side of the employee, the job feels more like a business transaction instead of a family or instead of a long-term option or a long-term relationship. So you need to find and figure out in your career what it is that you're trying to achieve. Are you looking for a certain amount of salary? Are you looking for work-home life balance? Do you want to be the greatest scientist that ever lived? Do you want to be a teacher? And do you want to be somewhere long-term? So when you're starting to think about your career, you have to look at it from a me-first perspective, because employers don't necessarily have your best interest at heart like they did years ago. So I tell the funny story about how my dad worked in a factory. He worked with my grandfather, and their bosses were just phenomenal men. If someone in their department, if their wife had a baby, they were the first guys showing up at the hospital. Every single year they had family picnics where they would have prizes and toys and, fun things for the kids to do. Would go to an amusement park. Everything would be catered. Every year they got a bonus. My dad was always dressed in logoed stuff from his employer. He loved working for that company. There was a loyalty there. He loved them. They treated him the same. If someone got sick, someone passed away, they sent flowers, they showed up at the funeral home. You don't see so much of that anymore. So I love the idea of working for a company where you feel that kind of camaraderie. I don't know that it exists in mass anymore, maybe like it did 30 or 40 years ago. So we need to be honest about what a job is. A job is a means to an end. It's how you pay your bills. It's how you put your kids through college. It's how you put food on the table. It's how you buy a car, take a vacation. It's okay to separate your life from your job and ask yourself the question, what am I getting from this job? Am I getting gratification? Am I getting fulfillment? Do I feel happy most of the time? People don't love their jobs all day, every day, but you want to be looking at those things. So you don't have to feel some sort of mislaid loyalty to an organization that next week might lay you off by Zoom. It's okay to put your needs first, your family's needs first. That is definitely a mind shift from the 1980s or the 1990s when there was much more loyalty. So often I get notes from people that say, hey, I got a really great job offer, but I feel so guilty leaving my company. And I say, well, why do you feel guilty? Well, they were really good to me. Well, then why are you leaving? Well, I'm underpaid by 40 grand. Well, they probably weren't as good to you as maybe you think. So, when you put things in perspective, it's okay. It's okay to want something better, to want something more. No guilt needed.
No, I love that. And the anecdotes, in fact, is one I'm going to bring up now, because this is something a bit unusual on resumes. And yet, as I read it, and I'm saying, you know what, this is right on point. You told a story, an anecdote about a doctor, I think, in Oklahoma. and it was during during the pandemic, and he was really getting, or she was getting stressed out, and came to you for a resume. Mm-hmm. But they never used that resume, but they got a lot out of it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so he ended up staying on in, the medical field, of course, but he was feeling incredibly overwhelmed during the pandemic. He was in a very short staff, in a very short supplied community hospital, and he just felt like, I don't know that I can do this another day. And the funniest part about that story is I'm usually in my office anywhere between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm a morning person. So I like to come in before the staff comes in. I go through emails. I get everything cleared up. Everybody comes in between 8 and 9. And then I'm usually done for the day by 12 or 1 o'clock. And so I kind of clean everything out. I answer the texts. I answer the emails. He was texting me, and it was like 5 till 5 on the East Coast. So it was in the middle of the night for him. And he was shocked as hell when I texted him back. And he said, "Are you a real person or are you a bot?" And I said, "No, I'm a real person." And we ended up getting on the phone and chatting, and I put him together with my team. But sometimes you just want to have something in your back pocket. And he was and I could tell he was so defeated. It was in the early days of the pandemic. People were dying in the hallways. They had no masks. They were making sort of makeshift things. And he was just incredibly overwhelmed. And he kept saying to his wife, "I don't know if I can do it another day, another day, another day." And so he ended up going through the interview process. Things, we created his resume for him. Things, of course, ended up getting better as supplies came in and things sort of cooled down a bit. But having that and going through the process and talking about his love sort of reignited his passion for, what he was doing. It was just circumstances that you could never even imagine that you would be in. But the process of going through the interview that we put all of our clients through, the process of detailing, what he loved about his work, that really helped him sort of see things straight. But it was a tough time. We worked with a lot of healthcare people in the past few years.
I love the way you put, though, that just having that resume empowered him. And I thought of that. I said, even if I was thinking maybe of switching a job or do something, if I just have that resume in my hand, I know I have a weapon. And if I really hit that button where I say, I've had it, I can just take that resume, start sending it out, call you back and say, all right, let's get it in the market. Let's do things. So I think thinking of a resume, which I never thought of it before as an empowering tool, is really something worthwhile. And if you're thinking of it, you're probably going to use it. But even if not, it does give you empowerment, or it may tell you, I really do like my current job. Let me stick to it. Robynn?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so, I think, important to feel empowered in a job search and that you're prepared for that if the time should come.
Well, we come to you to empower us because you're the expert.
That's right.
So before we wrap up, I want our audience, once again, the book is Career Confidence by our guest, Robynn Storey, Storey. And Robynn, please give us that website one more time.
Sure. It's www.storylineresumes.com. And that's Story with an E, like my last name, Storey.
Let Robynn make you a millionaire. Robynn, thanks so much for being with us today. I'd like to remind
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure and a lot of fun. I'd like to remind our audience you're listening to The Secrets of Success on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm your host, Bill Horan, asking you to please join us again next week at the same time when we'll continue our journey to success.